ay isang rehistradong botante para sa May 9, 2022 elections? Narito ang 12 bagay na hindi mo dapat gawin bago, sa araw mismo at pagkatapos ng eleksyon batay sa Omnibus Election Code at sa mga panuntunan ng Commission on Elections. Huwag ibenta ang iyong boto. Ang pagbili ng boto o pagbenta ng boto ay mahigpit na ipinagbabawal sa ilalim ng Omnibus Election Code. Ito ay may kaukulang parusa ng pagkakakulong mula 1 hanggang 6 na taon, pagkadiskwalipika sa pagsilbi sa isang pampublikong posisyon at pagkawala ng karapatang bumoto. Ang isang partidong politikal na mapapatunayang bumili o nagbenta ng boto ay pamumultahin na hindi bababa sa 10,000 piso. Huwag pagpustahan ang resulta ng eleksyon. Ang kahit na anong pera o bagay na may halaga na itinaya sa pustahan para sa resulta ng eleksyon ay mapupunta sa estado. Huwag pilitin o takutin ang iyong mga subordinates, kabilang ang mga miyembro ng parokya o simbahan, mga kasambahay, o mga nangungupahan para ikampanya o iboto o hindi iboto ang isang kandidato. Huwag pilitin o takutin sa direkta o hindi direktang paraan ang kahit na sinong opisyal o kawani para sa eleksyon. Huwag magdala ng baril sa labas ng iyong bahay o lugar ng trabaho. Kahit na ikaw ang may permit to carry, kailangan mo pa rin ng sulat mula sa COMELEC na nagsasaad na ikaw ay maaaring magbitbit ng baril sa labas. Huwag bumoto ng higit sa isang beses sa isang eleksyon. Huwag bumoto kung ikaw ay hindi rehistradong botante. Ang double voting o mas kilala sa tawag na flying voter ay may kaukulang parusa ng pagkabilanggo ng hanggang 6 na taon at multa na hanggang 10,000 piso. Huwag bumoto bilang kahalili ng isang rehistradong botante kahit pa may pahintulot. Huwag gumamit ng ibang balota maliban sa ibibigay ng Board of Election Inspectors. Ipinagbabawal din ang pagkakaroon ng higit sa isang official ballot. Huwag pikturan ang iyong balota. Hindi rin pinapayagan ang mag-selfie kasama ng iyong balota. Huwag magbitbit ng nakamamatay na armas sa loob ng presinto kung saan ka boboto at sa loob ng radius na 100 metro mula sa presinto sa araw ng eleksyon. Huwag magbenta, mag-alok, bumili, maghain, o kumuha ng alak at iba pang nakakalasing ng inumin isang araw bago ang eleksyon at sa mismong araw ng eleksyon. Ang mga hotels at establisimento lamang na pinapayagan ng Department of Tourism na magsilbi ng alak sa mga dayuhang turista ang maaaring di masaklawan ng liquor ban. Huwag magdaos o makilahok sa sabong, boxing, karera ng kabayo, hay-alay at iba pang kahalintulad na laro sa araw ng eleksyon. Bawat boto ay mahalaga at ang isang boto ay maaaring magresulta sa 6 na taon na maayos na pamamalakad ng gobyerno at matatag na ekonomiya o 6 na taon na talamak ang korupsyon, mataas ang porsyento ng mga walang trabaho at mas laganap na kahirapan. Protektahan mo ang iyong kinabukasan sa pamamagitan ng hindi pagbenta ng iyong boto. Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama. Painit ng painit ang nalalapit na eleksyon. Pero hindi dapat kalimutan na tayo ay nasa gitna pa ng pandemya at may mga nagsusulputang variants ng COVID-19 na posibleng mas malala. Pakikipagkamay, beso-beso, selfies, may mahigpit na paalala si Commission on Election spokesman James Jimenez.
Well, napakahalaga kasi no, na panatiliin nating ang seguridad ng ating mga mamamayan. Alam naman natin na during the campaign period, talagang ang posibleng tamaan ng COVID, no, dahil dito nga sa ongoing na pandemic natin, ay hindi naman yung mga kandidato o yung kanilang mga campaign staff, kundi yung mga taong nag-a-attend sa kanilang mga rally. Kaya napakahalaga na pangalagaan natin ang kanilang kalusugan. And this responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the candidates and their campaign teams.
Narito ang mga panuntunang itinakda ng COMELEC sa ilalim ng Resolution number 10732 kung paano matitiyak na ang mga campaign activities para sa May 9, 2022 na eleksyon ay hindi maging COVID super spreader events. Lahat ng kandidato at kanilang mga campaign support staff ay itinuturing na authorized persons outside of residence or APOR kahit ano paman ang alert level system at kanilang vaccination status. Ang face-to-face sorties, rallies, conventions, motorcades, caravans at meeting de avance ay pinapayagan lamang sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng alert levels 1, 2 at 3. Ang mga batang maedad 17 pababa at mga nakatatandang maedad 66 pataas at ang may mga kondisyong medikal, kabilang na ang mga buntis, ay bawal dumalo sa mga ganitong aktibidad.
At huwag nating kakalimutan yung mga selfie, mga pagkamay-kamay, pagyakap-yakap, beso-beso. Saglit lang yan. No? Wala pang ilang segundo yan, tapos na yan, lumipas na. Pero pag kayo ay nagkasakit dahil dyan, pag kayo ay nagka-COVID, mahabang gamutan yan, mahabang bubuluin ng inyong kalusugan yan. At hindi lang yan, pati ng inyong finances. Napakamahal magkasakit ngayon. So, wag nating isasang-alang sa kakunting enjoyment yung mas mahabang problema ng COVID.
Ang indoor campaign ay hindi pinapayagan sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng Alert Level 4. Mga outdoor na aktibidad lamang na nasa 30% capacity ang pinapayagan. Kahit na anong meeting, convention, rally, motorcade, caravan o meeting de avance ay hindi pinapayagan sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng Alert Level 5. Ang mga kandidato o ang kanilang mga campaign support staff ay pinagbabawalang gawin ang mga sumusunod. Huwag pumasok sa pribadong pamamahay habang nagsasagawa ng house-to-house campaign kahit pa pumayag ang may-ari ng bahay. Bawal ang pakipagkamay, pagyakap, beso-beso o kahit na anong physical contact sa kandidato o mga kasama nila at sa publiko. Bawal ang makipag-selfie o pagkuha ng litrato na lalabag sa social distancing protocols. Bawal mamahagi ng pagkain o inumin upang maiwasang magtanggal ng face mask ang mga tao.
Ang ating kalusugan at kasiguruhan sa panahon ng pandemya ay nakasalalay sa individual na pananagutan or individual responsibility. Kailangan tayo maging responsible tayo sa sarili nating mga gawa. Kung tayo ay mag-behave in a safe manner, magiging safe tayo lahat. Kung tayo mismo ang lalabag sa mga protocols na itinakda ng ating health authorities, talagang tataas ang tsansa ng infection, no, in our population. So, kailangan doon sa mga botante, doon sa mga nanonood ng mga rally, kayo mismo, magkusa kayo na huwag ninyong gagawin yan.
Tandaan, ang paglabag sa mga health protocols sa mga aktibidad na may kinalaman sa eleksyon ay itinuturing na election offense. Ang mga lalabag sa panuntunang itinakda ay nahaharap sa hanggang 6 na taong pagkabilanggo at multa na hindi bababa sa 10,000 piso. Maaari ding mawala ang karapatang bumoto pag ikaw ay nahatulang guilty sa paglabag sa mga protocols. Tunay na mahirap ang pangangampanya para sa eleksyon, pero sa gitna ng patuloy na public health crisis, ito ay higit pang naging masalimuot. Ang mga kandidato, ang kanilang campaign staff at ang publiko ay marapat na piliin lagi ang kaligtasan at kalusugan una sa lahat. Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama. Kung ikaw ay nakakita ng aktibidad na lumalabag sa mga naturang panuntunan sa iyong lugar, huwag mag-atubiling magsumbong sa COMELEC sa kanilang Facebook, Twitter at mobile.
Nagkainit ang eleksyon, pero dili nato kalimtan nga anaa pa kita sa tunga sa pandemya ug aduna pay bag-o ug mas mapintas nga variant sa COVID-19. Paglamano, paghalok, selfies, ang tingpamapa sa Commission on Elections nga si James Jimenez adunay istrikto nga pahinumdum.
Well, napakahalaga kasi na panatiliin nating ang seguridad ng ating mga mamamayan. Alam naman natin na during the campaign period, talagang ang posibleng tamaan ng COVID, dahil dito nga sa ongoing na pandemic natin, ay hindi naman yung mga kandidato o yung kanilang mga campaign staff, kundi yung mga taong nag-a-attend sa kanilang mga rally. Kaya napakahalaga na pangalagaan natin ang kanilang kalusugan. And this responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the candidates and their campaign teams.
Aniya ang mga giya nga gitagda sa COMELEC ilalom sa Resolution number 10732. Kung unsaon pagsiguro nga ang mga aktibidades sa kampanya para sa May 9, 2022 nga national ug lokal nga eleksyon dili mamahimong pamaagi kung diin mukaylap ang COVID. Ang mga kandidato ug ang ilang mga tigpaluyo ang mga ginakonsidera nga authorized persons outside of residence or APOR, bisan pa kung unsa ang alert level system o estado sa bakuna. Gitugutan ang atubangay nga mga sortie, rally, convention, motorcade, caravan ug meeting de avance apan sa mga lugar lang nga gipailalom sa alert levels 1, 2 ug 3. Bisan pa niana, ang mga tawo nga ubos sa 18 ug labaw sa 65 ang edad, apil na ang mga adunay mga pinahiping sakit ug mga buntis, dili tugutan nga moapil ni ining mga aktibidades.
At huwag nating kakalimutan yung mga selfie, mga pagkamay-kamay, pagyakap-yakap, beso-beso. Saglit lang yan. Wala pang ilang segundo yan, tapos na yan, lumipas na. Pero pag kayo ay nagkasakit dahil dyan, pag kayo ay nagka-COVID, mahabang gamutan yan, mahabang bubuluin ng inyong kalusugan yan. At hindi lang yan, pati ng inyong finances. Napakamahal magkasakit ngayon. So, wag nating isasang-alang sa kakunting enjoyment yung mas mahabang problema ng COVID.
Wala ginatugutan ang mga kampanya sa sulod sa mga venue sa mga lugar ilalom sa Alert Level 4. Ang mga aktibidades lamang nga anaa sa gawas ug 30% lamang ang kapasidad nga gitugutan. Ang bisan unsang meeting, convention, rally, motorcade, caravan ug meeting di avance, wala gitugutan sa mga lugar ilalom sa Alert Level 5. Ang mga kandidato ug ang ilang mga tigpaluyo sa kampanya wala gitugutan nga bubuhat sa mga musunod. Ayaw pagsulod sa pribadong balay sa panahon sa house-to-house nga kampanya, bisan pa gitugutan kini sa tagbalay. Walay paglamano, paggakos, paghalok, o bisan unsang pamaaging pisikal nga kontak, tiliwala sa mga kandidato sa ilang mga kauban ug sa publiko. Walay selfies o hulagway nga nagkinahanglan sa mga kandidato sa ilang mga kauban ug sa publiko nga mulapas sa protocol sa social distancing. Walay pag-apod-apod ug pagkaon ug ilimnon aron malikayan nga magtanggal ang mga tawo sa ilang face mask.
Ang ating kalusugan at kasiguruhan sa panahon ng pandemya ay nakasalalay sa individual na pananagutan or individual responsibility. Kailangan tayo maging responsible tayo sa sarili nating mga gawa. Kung tayo ay magbibehave in a safe manner, magiging safe tayo lahat. kung tayo mismo ang lalabag sa mga protocols na itinakda ng ating health authorities, talagang tataas ang tsansa ng infection, no, in our population. So, kailangan doon sa mga botante, doon sa mga nanonood ng mga rally, kayo mismo, magkusa kayo na huwag ninyong gagawin yan.
Hinumdumi, ang paglapas sa health protocols sa panahon sa mga aktibidades sa eleksyon, ginakonsidera pod nga paglapas sa eleksyon. Ang mga mulapas sa mga giya mag-atubang og pinakataas nga 6 katuig nga pagkapriso ug pinakagamay nga multa nga 10,000. Ang sad-an, mawad-an og katungod sa pagboto. Lisod ang kampanya sa eleksyon, bag-o pa man ang pandemya, ug sa tunga sa kasamtangang pampublikong krisis sa panglawas, nahimo pa kining mas lisod. Lisod ang kampanya sa eleksyon, bag-o pa man ang pandemya, ug sa tunga sa kasamtangang pampublikong krisis sa panglawas, nahimo pa kining mas lisod. Apan ang mga politiko, ang ilang mga tagapaluyo sa kampanya, ug ang publiko, nanginahanglan nga mupili una sa kaluwasan. Hinumdumi, ayaw kahadlok sa pagboto ug pagboto nga maalamon. Kung aduna kay nasaksihan nga aktibidades sa eleksyon nga nilapas sa mga nahisgutan nga mga giya sa inyong lugar, ayaw pagduha-duha sa pagsumbong niini sa COMELEC pinaagi sa ilang Facebook, Twitter o mobile.
Kada eleksyon, pumipili ang sambayanang Pilipino ng susunod na lider ng bansa, ng taong magtatakda ng plano at polisiya para sa 6 na taon ng ating kinabukasan. Pero ano nga ba ang hinahanap natin sa isang lider? Sa anong mga kwalifikasyon natin titimbangin ang mga kandidatong nanliligaw para sa matamis nating boto?
Dapat ang leader natin matapang, walang uurungan.
Oo nga.
Ang gusto kong kandidato ay magaling sumayaw at entertaining.
Gusto ko yung matikas, yung magaling magdala ng sarili.
Sana yung susunod na presidente mayaman na para hindi na mangurakot.
Alam mo bang base sa ating konstitusyon, 5 lang ang kwalifikasyon para sa mga nagnanais tumakbong presidente ng Pilipinas? Una, kailangan natural-born citizen ng Pilipinas. Ikalawa, kailangang rehistradong botante. Ikatlo, marunong bumasa at magsulat. Ika-4, nasa edad na 40 sa araw ng eleksyon. At ika-5, residente ng Pilipinas sa loob ng 10 taon bago ang eleksyon. Simple, hindi ba? Walang itinatakdang kwalifikasyon base sa edukasyon, work experience o kayamanan. Pero simple nga bang tunay ang mga dapat nating hanapin sa susunod na leader ng ating bansa? Ayon kay Commission on Elections spokesperson James Jimenez, marami pa tayong pwede at dapat hanapin.
Very basic o payak ang ating requirements. Ibig pa sabihin nito na yan lang ang kailangan nating hanapin? Siyempre hindi. Yan ang tinatawag natin minimum. Pwede kang maghanap ng mas lampas pa dyan. No? Halimbawa, maghanap ka ng taong merong integridad. Gawin mong necessary ingredient yan. Gawin mong kalakip yan ng pagpili mo kung sino magiging pangulo. Kailangan may integridad, kailangan may kakayanan, kailangan magaling, kailangan matalino, at kailangan nagsasabi ng katotohanan sa bayan. Kasi ang pipiliin natin ay hindi lang basta-bastang tao. Leader natin ang pipiliin natin. Leader natin na bibigyan natin ng napakalaking kapangyarihan. Kapangyarihan over our lives, over our livelihoods, over our country. So, bagaman maliit or payak lamang ang requirements ng konstitusyon, kailangan tayo bilang botante, pag boboto na tayo, kailangan medyo mas mataas naman ang standards natin.
Tunay na marami tayong dapat hanapin na katangian sa susunod na leader ng bayan. Ngayon, higit kailanman, kailangan nating maging mapanuri.
Sa tingin ko bilang botante, kailangan maging mas mapanuri tayo dahil hindi biro ang halalan. Hindi biro ang hinihingi niya sa atin ng mga kandidatong yan. Gusto nila maging leader natin. Gusto nila magkaroon ng kapangyarihan sa ating kabuhayan, sa ating buhay, sa ating bansa. At dahil dyan, kailangan natin maging mapanuri. Kung jowa mo nga lang pinadadaan mo sa butas ng karayom bago mo sagutin, paano pa kaya yung mga elected leaders natin na may tunay na kapangyarihan sa iyo?
Sabi nga ni Director Jimenez, kung kinikilatis nating maigi ang isang potensyal na jowa bago ibigay ang matamis nating oo, mas lalong higit na dapat nating kilatisin ang mga nanliligaw para sa makapangyarihan nating boto.
Hindi pa kami pwedeng bumoto.
Kaya sana pumili kayo ng tama para sa aming kinabukasan.
Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama. Painit ng painit ang nalalapit na eleksyon. Pero hindi dapat kalimutan na tayo ay nasa gitna pa ng pandemya at may mga nagsusulputang variants ng COVID-19 na posibleng mas malala. Pakikipagkamay, beso-beso, selfies, may mahigpit na paalala si Commission on Election spokesman James Jimenez.
Well, napakahalaga kasi na panatiliin nating ang seguridad ng ating mga mamamayan. Alam naman natin na during the campaign period, talagang ang posibleng tamaan ng COVID, dahil dito nga sa ongoing na pandemic natin, ay hindi naman yung mga kandidato o yung kanilang mga campaign staff, kundi yung mga taong nag-a-attend sa kanilang mga rally. Kaya napakahalaga na pangalagaan natin ang kanilang kalusugan. And this responsibility falls squarely on the shoulders of the candidates and their campaign teams.
Narito ang mga panuntunang itinakda ng COMELEC sa ilalim ng Resolution number 10732 kung paano matitiyak na ang mga campaign activities para sa May 9, 2022 na eleksyon ay hindi maging COVID super spreader events. Lahat ng kandidato at kanilang mga campaign support staff ay itinuturing na authorized persons outside of residence or APOR kahit ano paman ang alert level system at kanilang vaccination status. Ang face-to-face sorties, rallies, conventions, motorcades, caravans at meeting de avance ay pinapayagan lamang sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng alert levels 1, 2 at 3. Ang mga batang maedad 17 pababa at mga nakatatandang maedad 66 pataas at ang may mga kondisyong medikal, kabilang na ang mga buntis, ay bawal dumalo sa mga ganitong aktibidad.
At huwag nating kakalimutan yung mga selfie, mga pagkamay-kamay, pagyakap-yakap, beso-beso. Saglit lang yan. Wala pang ilang segundo yan, tapos na yan, lumipas na. Pero pag kayo ay nagkasakit, dahil dyan, pag kayo ay nagka-COVID, mahabang gamutan yan, mahabang bubuluin ng inyong kalusugan yan. At hindi lang yan, pati ng inyong finances. Napakamahal magkasakit ngayon. So, wag nating isasang-alang sa kakunting enjoyment yung mas mahabang problema ng COVID.
Ang indoor campaign ay hindi pinapayagan sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng Alert Level 4. Mga outdoor na aktibidad lamang na nasa 30% capacity ang pinapayagan. Kahit na anong meeting, convention, rally, motorcade, caravan o meeting de avance ay hindi pinapayagan sa mga lugar na nasa ilalim ng Alert Level 5. Ang mga kandidato o ang kanilang mga campaign support staff ay pinagbabawalang gawin ang mga sumusunod. Huwag pumasok sa pribadong pamamahay habang nagsasagawa ng house-to-house campaign kahit pa pumayag ang may-ari ng bahay. Bawal ang pakipagkamay, pagyakap, beso-beso o kahit na anong physical contact sa kandidato o mga kasama nila at sa publiko. Bawal ang makipag-selfie o pagkuha ng litrato na lalabag sa social distancing protocols. Bawal mamahagi ng pagkain o inumin upang maiwasang magtanggal ng face mask ang mga tao.
Ang ating kalusugan at kasiguruhan sa panahon ng pandemya ay nakasalalay sa individual na pananagutan or individual responsibility. Kailangan tayo maging Maging responsible tayo sa sarili nating mga gawa. Kung tayo ay mag-behave in a safe manner, magiging safe tayo lahat. Kung tayo mismo ang lalabag sa mga protocols na itinakda ng ating health authorities, talagang tataas ang tsansa ng infection, no, in our population. So, kailangan doon sa mga botante, doon sa mga nanonood ng mga rally, kayo mismo, magkusa kayo na huwag ninyong gagawin yan.
Tandaan, ang paglabag sa mga health protocols sa mga aktibidad na may kinalaman sa eleksyon ay itinuturing na election offense. Ang mga lalabag sa panuntunang itinakda ay nahaharap sa hanggang 6 na taong pagkabilanggo at multa na hindi bababa sa 10,000 piso. Maaari ding mawala ang karapatang bumoto pag ikaw ay nahatulang guilty sa paglabag sa mga protocols. Tunay na mahirap ang pangangampanya para sa eleksyon, pero sa gitna ng patuloy na public health crisis, ito ay higit pang naging masalimuot. Ang mga kandidato, ang kanilang campaign staff at ang publiko ay marapat na piliin lagi ang kaligtasan at kalusugan una sa lahat. Tandaan, huwag matakot bumoto at bumoto ng tama. Kung ikaw ay nakakita ng aktibidad na lumalabag sa mga naturang panuntunan sa iyong lugar, huwag mag-atubiling magsumbong sa COMELEC sa kanilang Facebook, Twitter at mobile. Good afternoon, Iloilo.
They're joining via live stream daw, Ariel.
Oo, yung iba nga, wala sa meeting room pero live stream. But we have 41, so a good number already. Good afternoon, Joyce.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Carol. Good afternoon, Seidel Foundation.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Ariel.
Medyo umaaraw na sa labas.
Good afternoon,
Hindi na
everyone.
siya. Ay, si Tita Jo. Hi, Ma'am Jo. Josephine Mendoza, hello. Good afternoon po. Siyempre yung mga Visayas participants natin, di ba? I think they're all excited kasi yung karamihan talaga, hindi alam ko ano yung, alam yung media accountability, kasi naman yung one of the keywords natin no, sa ating programa ngayon. Pero yung press council, media council, hindi alam. Di ba, Joyce? Pero for all we know, nag-i-exist na po siya matagal, especially yung under the Philippine Press Institute, tsaka yung Cebu Citizens Media Council and yung Cordillera Citizens Media Council. Mamaya pag-uusapan natin, ano ba yung success stories nila, Joyce, di ba? Kaya bang i-replicate in other areas, di ba? Yun po yung pag-uusapan natin ngayon. But before that, all right, magkumustahan mo tayo saglit. Sinatawag si Sir Gary. Yung iba sa atin.
Hi, Sir Gary.
Siyempre, Jay, ang dami-dami nating activities. I'm pretty sure yung iba umattend na other activities. Meron tayong monthly, ang dami-dami na. Meron tayong weekly din, di ba? May podcast, may roundtable, merong training programs, tsaka meron din tayong, si Joyce pala, ipa-plug na natin. Next monthly roundtable natin is with Joyce Pañares kasi umiikot po yun. Okay? Next Wednesday po. It falls every third Wednesday of the month. At ang pag-uusapan natin...
Three confirmed speakers now. We have 3 confirmed speakers. The president of Pulse Asia, Ronnie Holmes, is joining us.
Yay!
I just talked with Publicos. They're sending Dr. Yap.
Yay!
And Okta of the Dr. David will also join us.
Ano yung title, Joyce?
Na-survey ka na ba?
Na-survey ka na ba?
Hindi tayo nasa-survey.
Hindi. Teaser lang yun. Pinapatakam lang natin sila sa magiging topic natin in the next monthly roundtable. Ayun po, itong media accountability is actually the second leg after Luzon. So we're happy that ang turnout ng first level of discussion is basically orientation katulad nito ngayon. But already, after the program natin in the first leg, ay nag-agree ka agad, especially yung trustee natin, na mag-create sila ng kanilang media council. So ano pinagkaiba ng press sa media council? Siyempre pag naisip natin just pag media council, inclusive na yun, meron ng broadcast and other sectors. Pag press kasi, yun yung atin meron tayo sa PPA na limited to print lang. So that's actually the purpose of making or establishing press councils outside Metro Manila na inclusive. So yun. At ito pa, did I tell you, Joyce, na yung Bulacan natin is also doing its own media council, establishing its own media council. Yeah. Of course, si Ami. But si Ami later na yun sa Mindanao leg na. Ayun. You were saying, Joyce?
Ayun nga. Because you mentioned din kay Ami. But then we should just we should teaser din ito. Na we will eventually have our meeting with the regional, di ba?
Yes, Sir Gary.
Yes.
So hopefully, ito si Carol andito na. We're exploring face-to-face kasi Sir Gary. Si Sir Gary pala Joyce, siya yung staple siya sa lahat. Katulad ng amin ni Luz. So pag face-to-face, meron tayo niyan. And hopefully, kasi ang hirap nung imi-meet na natin yung prospective members of the council, Sir Gary, na online pa rin. Feasible siya, I think, Carol, kasi small group lang naman. Very exclusive siya. Kasi members na talaga ng press council. Although, naisip ni Joyce na nag-meeting kami sa office, gagawing Joyce? Hybrid. Diba?
Pwede mag-hybrid tayo for the other areas kung hindi kakayanin.
It's absolutely something to look forward to. My goodness, after all this time.
Yun, So yun, bakit hybrid siya, Joyce? Kahit na andun tayo, let's say, pupunta tayo ng, anong uunahin natin, Joyce? Batangas, no? I know. Davao.
Mindanao is the first leg.
Yeah, first leg is Mindanao. So, kahit andun tayo sa isang hotel, mapapanood pa rin tayo, mapapagyan pa rin tayo ng ating mga participants, especially yung stakeholders ng Media Council or Press Council. Ayun, pasalamat tayo sa Hansalo Foundation, Joyce.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yan.
Carol, maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat, Carol, kasi mapagpasensya ka.
Push, oo nga.
Kasi makukulit kami nila, Joyce, sa training. Kaya speak of training team, maraming salamat sa ating production technical team. Sila Ate Beth, sila Pierre, sila Roger, sila Priscilla, si Risa, si Sheila, na wala tayo dito pag hindi nila nabuo yung the whole technical process.
Yeah.
Diba? Saludo kami sa inyo.
Ang Seidel Foundation, nagpapasalamat naman sa Philippine Press Institute, of course, and the whole team. Kasi, di ba, without the team, nako.
Correct. And speaking of, umpisa na tayo and nagpasalamat na tayo sa Hansalo Foundation na sumusuporta sa ating napakaraming activities every year and looking forward to more activities next year. Hybrid siya, may face-to-face na. Ayun, yung ating tawag nito, desire na makita uli ang ating mga participants, ang ating mga members natin sa PPI. Hopefully next year, ayun, with the help of Seidel Foundation at saka sa ating mga other partners. And now, I'd like to call one of the project directors na talagang, as I said, pasensyosa, tapos masipag, syempre, at saka singkulit din namin. Caroline Lee, Seidel Foundation, on behalf of Attorney Guts Heineke, the resident representative of Seidel Foundation to the Philippines. Good afternoon, Carol.
Good afternoon, Ariel. Ako pala yun.
Ikaw na yun.
Good afternoon. Maraming salamat, Ariel. So, I'm Caroline Lee, Program Coordinator of the Seidel Foundation. And our resident representative, Mr. Guts Heineke, regrets he won't be able to join us this afternoon, but extends, of course, his regards to everyone. Just a few words on the Seidel Foundation. It's a German foundation with its headquarters in Munich, Germany, and we've been working in the Philippines with local partners, building up democracy and good governance, and which is why we are very happy to be working with our very important partner, the Philippine Press Institute. Good afternoon to everyone, to Mr. Rolando G. Estabilio, PPI Chairman and Publisher of the Manila Standard. Of course, to PPI Visayas Trustees, Mr. Alex Raypal. I hope he's back in already in the room. Mr. Dalmasio Masi Grafil. And of course, Ms. Joyce Pañares, our moderator for today and news editor of the Manila Standard. And all our special guests, our esteemed speakers, and welcome to all our participants today. Nowadays, it's easier to find out how many are actually in the room. You just look at the number of participants, no? Dati medyo you visually count mo pa. So we have 43. I hope that continues to increase. It has been increasing. And welcome everyone to today's activity, Media Accountability and Press Council. I welcome you to join me in taking a moment or two to ponder the importance of what is going to be discussed this afternoon. So what is media accountability? Why is it important, especially in the media landscape of today, which is increasingly being dominated by online platforms? What is the role of the local press council? So our speakers will be touching on that. Why is there a need for local press councils as a means for accountability and self-regulation? So I thank all our speakers, and these are the topics we will be talking about that will be discussed today. And that being said, I wish you an interesting and insightful discussion this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, HSF. Tama si Joyce, si Carol. Ano ba yung relasyon ng media accountability, self-regulation, tsaka pag-create ng importansya or necessity ng media or press council, no?
Sana magtaas ka agad ng kamay kanina. Carol,
pasagot ka na kaagad.
Pasagot ka agad, Carol.
Nagpapa-impress ka naman kay Sir Guy.
Media accountability.
Oo,
diba? Oo, ang aking former dean.
Correct. Madalas natin pinag-uusapan this in all our training programs, although not a separate topic, but ito talaga separate topic na talaga ito. Kasi we're hoping that our public or publics appreciate the need for a local media council. Kasi matagal na natin pinag-uusapan yung media accountability, self-regulation amongst ourselves as media practitioners or PPM members. Pero ito ngayon talaga, ini-engage natin yung public kasi kasama dito sila sa pag-establish talaga ng Media Council, Press Council outside Metro Manila. That being said, I'd like to call the Chair and President of the Philippine Press Institute, also the publisher of Manila Standard, is going to give his video message. Dahil nga sa mga technical na problema, mas maganda, Joyce, minsan bini-video message na lang para hindi putol-putol. All right, let's hear from the chairman of the Philippine Press Institute, Rolly Estabilio.
Good afternoon, everyone. First up, let me welcome everyone to this PPI webinar on Media Accountability and Press Council. Allow me to thank Attorney Checking Chiares of the Cebu City Press Citizens Council for acknowledging PPI for its paid work it initiated 8 years ago that led to the establishment of a press council in the Queen City of the South. Kudos we must give to my predecessor, Jesus Dureza, publisher of Mindanao Times and former press secretary, and of course our executive director, Ariel Hassel Cervantes, for their pioneering effort to set up a grievance mechanism as a way of media members to be accountable for their work. I will not tarry much because I know your job, you still have a long way to go to revive this press council. At any rate, let me just give you some of my thoughts. The biggest hurdle a typical journalist faces every time he goes out to work is to be true to his calling. There is a myriad of pressures that can lead him to astray from the straight and narrow confine of ethical journalism. While there are newsroom guidelines to steer him towards that path, they are often honored in the breach rather than in the observance. This becomes even more prevalent in this day and age of digital journalism. The advent of personal computers has opened up an opportunity for everyone and anyone to become, quote unquote, a journalist. The internet at the fingertips disposal has allowed one and all to write and post articles on the web. This has given rise to bloggers, trolls, influencers that have blurred the lines between ethical and unethical journalism. Worse, it has left news consumers dissatisfied and skeptical. Journalists are supposed to be the gatekeepers of news, but somehow the traditional newsroom has abdicated that space to social media, wherein the discourse and disinformation and misinformation abound. With no accountability for what is being dished out on the web, the result is the proliferation of fake news that has distorted the definition of journalism. In such a world, ethics, more than ever, is what we need in the workplace. A good and effective journalist who holds people and government accountable must begin his trade with a level of personal accountability. As the saying goes, he that will come into equity must come with a clean hand. Simply put, ethical journalism begins with oneself by being accountable for his work. This entails factual information, hard evidence, balance, and impartiality in news articles crafted in outstanding grammar, spelling, and punctuation. In all this, humanity must be present by drawing the line between hurtful and harmful. This makes for credibility, which is at the heart of journalism in one's work. By getting facts right, which in turn is the cardinal principle of journalism, accountability comes to the fore, a sign of professionalism and responsible journalism. But as I said at the outset, many media practitioners fail to observe morally driven rules as they buckle down doing their job amid internal and external pressures. The result? Complications and conflicts set in that in many instances need law's intervention. Your task today, therefore, is precisely to address and avoid such confrontation and ensure ethical journalism takes its course. It is nothing short of heroic to put up, or in this case, revive a press council, given that journalism lacks the characteristic of a profession like medicine or law, whose members are morally and legally bound by its rules and regulations in their practice. Journalists, in contrast, are the disparate lot whose access to journalism is not restricted by a professional body to ensure its independence. But that independence, by and large, has been taken out of context by many of our colleagues. Just because the press is free doesn't mean it can report, write, or publish anything it wants. Admittedly, some of us in media do not always do a good job and don't perform well. We don't live up to our own standards as a watchdog for the public we serve. Can we now blame if the public views us with distrust and ask, who is watching the watchdog? Thus, your effort today to revive the PPI Press Council is in the right direction to correct that negative perception of journalists and media. It is an avenue for redress for any breach of the code of ethics we ourselves crafted. As a parting word, to underscore the formidable challenge you face, let me quote journalist and author Bob Woodward of the famous water scandal on his take on media accountability. It is easy to agree on the principles of ethical journalism, but applying them in real life is harder. Because, he said, the goal to reveal the truth can sometimes clash with the duty to limit harm. It is up to journalists and editors to choose how to act in such situations. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your call now. Good afternoon.
Maraming salamat, Sir Rolly, and good afternoon to you, Sir Rolly. Joyce, dito pa lang sa opening statement message ni Sir Rolly, ang dami ng takeaway. Ano? I was shocked by what he said on personal accountability. Bago pa natin mapag-uusapan itong media accountability, professionalism, etc., nasa bawat isa sa atin as members of the press na pagtibayan yung trabaho. Tsaka yung binanggit niya yung ethical responsibility as well. Ayun, wag natin patagalin pa, baka madami pang masabi. I'd like to turn over the floor to our Seminar Director of News Editor of the Standard. Please welcome Ms. Joyce Pañares. Good afternoon, Joyce.
Good afternoon, Ariel. And again, a pleasant good afternoon to all of our participants. Hindi lang po dito sa Zoom room, kundi pati rin po sa Facebook kung saan naka-FB Live po tayo ngayon. Tama si Ariel, hindi na natin patatagalin ito. Pero siguro 2 punto lang bago ko tawagin yung una nating resource speaker. No? Kasi hitik na hitik po sa resource speakers ang ating discussion ngayong araw na to. Una, may mga na-encounter pa rin ako ng mga reporters na sumasama ang loob pag nawawala ang byline o tagline nila sa dyaryo. It's as if they're so in love with their bylines. Siguro yon, to me, parang lagi ko silang pinaalalahanan na teka muna, huwag kayong ma-in love sa byline ninyo. Kasi yung byline, kaya tayo may pangalan sa dyaryo. The reason why we lend our name to our stories, para alam kung sinong kakasuhan. Kung sakaling may mali sa storya natin. That is accountability. Kaya hindi tayo yung tipong works at Krusty Krab. We lend our name to to our articles to let the people know you can hold us accountable for what we write. At ikalawa, siguro ang isa sa take away ko lang doon kay Sir Rolly din kanina is that media accountability will not diminish us. Hindi ito para tayo ay kastiguhin. Ito ay para tayo ay palakasin. We can only grow stronger if we hold ourselves accountable. Then we can exercise self-regulation at hindi na kailangan pakialamanan pa ng external forces outside of media. Ngayon, yun lang, ganda lang sa parte ko. Hindi ako magpapanggap na naintindihan ko yung buong pagiging diskusyon today. That's why we have our resource speakers. Una po ay si Professor Gary Mariano. He's actually the former chairperson of the Philippine Press Council. Sabi nga ni Ariel, mula noon hanggang ngayon, constant si Prof. Gary pagdating sa usapin na to, and he will be discussing the need for a local press council as a means for accountability and regulation, and how does a local press council work. Prof. Gary, good afternoon po.
Good afternoon. Joyce, thank you very much for the introduction. Ariel, thank you for inviting me here again. There are some familiar names and faces in the crowd. So Alex, Marit, of course, my fellow speakers, maayong hapon sa tanan. Yun lang alam ko, no? So, can I now be allowed to share my screen?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Parang nawala. There you go. It's an overview. Okay, here. I will go over the scope of press freedom, what we mean by accountability, and the different forms of regulation. And then we look at the experience of the Philippine Press Council, reasons why it was viable, why it did not work at that time, and the opportunities available to local media councils. No? So I will not lecture, especially on the first 3 points. I will just use these 3 points as a means to put things into context, but my discussion will be more of my evaluation of the Philippine Press Council experience and the opportunities we see in creating local media councils. So first of all, when we talk about press freedom, remember that press freedom is one of the most important legs of a democracy. If you can give democracy 4 legs or 3 legs to stand on, press freedom will be one of them, along with the general freedom called freedom of free expression. Okay? And when we talk about press freedom, we're actually talking about 2 forms in general. So one is freedom from prior restraint, which includes registration, licensing, yung attempts to curtail circulation and dissemination, as well as discriminatory taxation. By discriminatory taxation, we mean taxes specific to the press or to the media. Okay. Second is that punishment from non-malicious publication. Now, those of you who have taken courses in mass media law, I think the more common expression is to say freedom from punishment from innocent or harmless publications. Now, I'd like to put that in quotation in italics because sometimes information or publication speech can be harmful, it can be offensive, but it doesn't have to be malicious. Okay, but so if it's malicious, it should be protected. No. Okay. So what do we mean by accountability? Mr. Estabino already gave us an idea of what accountability is. Simply saying it is that we're not superhuman, we're not perfect, that freedom we enjoy is not absolute, especially when we realize that other people also have rights. Okay? And as journalists, one of your biggest accountabilities, aside from the byline, I'm amused when students in the school papers enjoy their bylines. No? In my university, our bylines consist of the full name of the student, and they say, "Wow, how nice!" And I say, "That's actually a guide for the lawyers in case they want to sue you. No, they have your full name." Okay, so Our first accountability is to show proof. Okay, we learned that in journalism textbooks. Show proof. Who said what to whom, etc. We are always talking of verification as well as attribution. Okay, but then realize that journalists are not, despite the claims, belief, and maybe the affectation of some, we are not perfect, not omniscient, and not omnipotent. Okay, so we must be able to realize mistakes voluntarily or when our attention is called out. Okay, so harm, injury, damage to reputation and ego can happen in sometimes the most harmless stories. Even if we don't see them happening, they do happen. We remember his childhood ditty, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never harm me. I came across a 2,500 2005 British rock song. The title is, the refrain goes, sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words, they really kill me. In other words, words can harm, okay? And also we must be reminded that our first loyalty, we thank the authors, Kovac and Rochelle Steele for this phrase. We are reminded of our first loyalty, which is not to our editors or our employers, but to the public. Okay, so what is this right of reply? Wait a minute, let me just work this now. So what are these forms of regulation? Okay, so we have three types of regulation that I mentioned. One is state regulation. The other is self-regulation. And the third is shared regulation. I was asked to talk about self-regulation, but in the case of local media councils, I think we're talking more of shared regulation or shared accountabilities as well. Okay, so when it comes to state regulation, only the state controls the media. Okay, so the media have no self-determination. And right now we're faced with three realities or three threats even with regard to state regulation. The items 2 and 3 already are in place. But let's look at the first one, the mandatory right of reply. Okay, and in our current House of Representatives, there is this bill filed by Representative Marcoleta seeking penalties for the failure to recognize a news subject's right of reply. So this is mandatory. This is obligatory. This is what else can we think? This is statutory. This is court enforceable. So there are fines and prison terms involved here. Okay. Fortunately, this is a bill. Okay, and as we know, that a bill at this point in the life of the Congress is almost good as dead because the elections are approaching and we will have a new Congress. But the threat is still there. Meaning in the next Congress, the 19th Congress, we will have, I can anticipate another slew of bills being proposed in both chambers of Congress. No? There was a time when there were several of these bills. Fortunately for the 18th Congress, there's only one. This is 5185. Okay, and so the right of reply is a courtesy. Okay. It's a courtesy. If you talk about somebody and then that person you talk about otherwise disagrees or challenges or does not like what you said, that person should be given the chance to respond. Okay. So when we talk about a right, it's more than just a privilege. It's an inherent right. So there can be different forms of this. One is it's mandatory. Okay. So we're being forced to honor this right of reply, or it can be the ethical or voluntary. Okay, so the editor or the author, the publication or the group of journalists can recognize this right. Okay, so the right of reply can be as a correction, an alternative account, an explanation, a clarification, a context giving, or simply a response. Okay, so I think we have many examples from the past, and there's proof that some libel cases have been averted simply because the complainant's right of reply was honored. Okay, and vice versa, there were libel cases filed. Okay, we remember this case from 2004, in which a former diplomat sued a newspaper in Manila for almost 100 million pesos for simply for refusing to honor his right of reply. Okay, so another form of course, we know state regulation is libel, and again, this is not a lecture on libel. So, but what I'd like to point out is that libel involves prison terms. Okay, so from 6 months and 1 day up to 4 years and 2 months. Okay, now in the last 12, maybe 15 years, there were moves to decriminalize libel. No? In being consistent with the worldwide movement to do so. Okay, so you must have heard of Article 19 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights. There's a worldwide movement to decriminalize libel. So there were bills of this sort filed in our Congress. Unfortunately, sometime, I think 2012, we were blindsided by Republic Act 10175. This is the the cybercrime prevention law. Okay, and what did the cybercrime prevention law do? First, it solidified the status of libel as a crime. So we were forced to step back from our efforts to decriminalize libel. Libel has been further elevated, cemented as a crime. And secondly, the penalty for libel has been upgraded. So from merely being a prison correctional offense, it is now a prison mayor. So according to the computation by this law office, the penalty is now ranging from 2 years, 4 months, and 1 day to 8 years. So you compare this again with the previous slide. Tignan nyo lang, no? Libel used to be a maximum of 4 years and 2 months. Now it is a maximum of 8 years. Okay. All right. Now, what is self-regulation? Of course, going back a bit, libel is I think it's one. This is one of the scariest experiences for any journalist, especially if one is convicted. We have heard gallant statements from some journalists who claim that if you haven't had a libel suit, you haven't really been a journalist. No, that's, to me, is just being romantic. Nobody wants to spend a single day in prison for libel. Okay, especially if you know what life is in prison. Okay, so on the other hand, what is this idea of self-regulation? The Philippine Press Council is the first and only attempt, I think, at self-regulation. It was mandated in 1965 by the Republic Act 4363 in conjunction with a libel provision. I think the libel provision was for this act was connected to the filing of libel cases. Okay? But Section 3 of this law says that pardon the sexist language, newspaper men in the Philippines should organize and elect members of a Philippine Press Council, and their function should be to promulgate a code of ethics, investigate violations thereof, and censure any person found to be in violation of this. We know that this was quickly adopted by a group that that had been formed earlier. The group was called the Philippine Press Institute, and the Philippine Press Institute created the Philippine Press Council as authorized by this Republic Act. However, we also know that in 1972, martial law led to the closure of anything that has to do with private media. Okay, and in fact, during the martial law period, Ferdinand Marcos instituted 3 types of media councils, but they were not councils. They had nothing to do with self-regulation. In fact, they were regulatory bodies, and their job was to license those whom the state wanted to allow to publish. So just quickly, the MMC is the Mass Media Council. The MAC is the Media Advisory Council. And I still remember, I was in grade school at that time, but I used to hang around in my mother's office, which is a newspaper, and I would overhear editors complaining, and they would say, "What do the military have to advise journalists?" Okay, as a reaction to the term Media Advisory Council. And then in 1974, there were 2 parallel media councils: the Philippine Council for Print Media and its counterpart, Broadcast Media Council. Okay, of course, we know that in 1986. Things became liberal again, and there were attempts to revive the Press Council. In 1997, the Code of Ethics was adopted by the Philippine Press Institute, and this was shared by other groups like the National Press Club, the KBP, and even included NUJP, and even the College Editors Guild. No? So this document is pretty well known and well spread in the Philippines. Okay, and then in 2001, there was an attempt in earnest to expand the membership of the Philippine Press Council. Okay, so how did the Press Council work at the time it was in operation? Okay, so this is a very nice setup, no? Fairly simple, in which a news subject who is unhappy, who happens to be unhappy with, or has a disagreement or whatever with an article written about him or her, writes a reply to the author or to the editor or to the publisher. Okay, so if the publication publishes the reply, then the case is resolved. Okay, both go away happy. But in case the publication ignored the reply, then the news subject could go to the Press Council. And if it went to the Press Council, the Press Council, of course, makes an assessment, an evaluation of whether to investigate, to pursue the investigation, or to dismiss the complaint. Okay, but in case the Press Council decides to work on a case, to adopt a case, then its first action would be to direct the publication in the publication in question to publish a reply. And if the publication prints the reply, case is over again. Okay, but once the publication ignores the Press Council order, then the Press Council would invoke the penalty of censure. And this censure is very, very verbal. It is private. Okay, so what happens here is that other PPC members, other Press Council members, would publish their reply in their own platforms, in their own pages. Okay, and that is how a case would end. Okay. However, there were some shortcomings in this arrangement. Okay, and number one, let's just focus on the disadvantages. No, number one is that there were non-press representatives in the Press Council. We should look at that as an advantage, no? That it was multisectoral. Okay, I think I was invited sometime around 2004, and then we were 3 non-press members in the press council. So the other one was a representative from the business sector. His name is Chito Salazar, and he was the chief executive officer of the FINMA group of companies running several schools. Okay, and then another representative from the legal sector. Okay, at that time we had former appeals justice Ramon Mabutas, and eventually he was replaced by Dean Tony Lavinia. We joined a core of editors from the business world, Malaya, Manila Standard, Inquirer, journals, Philippine Star, and then the rest of Luzon, and then one trustee from Visayas and one trustee from Manila. So these were the press members. Okay. Now, as I said, one of the disadvantages eventually was that the non-press representatives were sometimes viewed as outsiders, not by the council itself, but by the outside community. Okay, so they were expecting the press council members to be all part of the press community. On the other hand, there was also this perception that the press council was nothing but an old boys club who would not dare to censure or sanction a senior esteemed member of their profession. Okay, so in other words, they would be untouchable people. There was also the lack of cooperation from some members. No? If we want to use the term pasaway, okay, there were those who said that they did not care about the press council. Okay, there were also notable non-members. Okay, we know that some big brands are not members of the PPI. Okay, so we look at that as a disadvantage. Another is that the PPI, the press council, only accounted for the print publications. Okay, so broad radio and television were in their own domain. Okay, and this is the early 2000s, so we didn't have Rappler and we didn't have Puma broadcast podcast yet. So this is there was no inclusion of the digital media, so it's just print only. We also had this problem with attendance because most of the meetings were held middle of the day. Okay, and middle of the day for news editors was not a good choice. So we moved this to later at night. Okay, and then related to lack of cooperation is the fact that the council really had no teeth. Okay, so even if the other members of the council were to publish the censure in their own respective newspapers, this is not the same as having that reply published in the original venue where it was first published. Okay, so we could say that it was like a tiger you had the growl of a tiger or a lion, but not the teeth. Okay, and of course, this last point will resonate to anybody outside of Luzon. It was viewed as Manila-centric. Sure, there were representatives from the rest of Luzon. There was one representative from the Visayas and one representative from Mindanao. But the press council at that time was dominated by the so-called national broadsheets that were based in Manila. Okay, so that brings us to the possibility of expanding the scope of the councils. First point is, do we still consider ourselves press or media? What's the difference? No, of course, in terms of semantics, press is a medium. Okay, so the printing press, the press is a brand, is a medium, okay, of mass communication. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, press, it should be the same as mass media. However, nowadays, when we say press, we can also be exclusive and talking only about printed products, whereas the term media would be more inclusive. Okay, and then we can also have consider boundaries. So I would call this self-defined boundaries. The Press Council, the Press Institute is not there to say there should only be one press council nationwide. Okay, that's why I put the National Press Council or the National Media Press Council in brackets. Okay, because they can be regional, provincial, and even community-based media councils. So below, I have misplaced bullet points. We can talk about, for example, the Eastern Visayas Media Council to include news brands, news outlets, and non-press members from the entire Eastern Visayas region. Or if you want, if you're that ambitious, you can have one big Visayas Media Council. Or you can have this as a provincial media council if you so want that. So we can maybe an example would be the Eastern Samar Media Council. Or again, if you want to be really just confine yourselves to one location, you can have the Ormoc Media Council or the Tacloban Media Council or the Tagbilaran Media Council, no? smaller councils. Okay, and aside from just a press council himself, this is where it becomes co-regulatory, or we have a shared ownership when we involve academe and other a lot of other sectors that we want to involve. Okay, so it's up to the organization how they want to set this up. So you can have business, church, lawyers, civil society, civic organizations, and media. I encountered some media councils. I think this was the Guam Community Media Council, in which they did not even involve the media. Okay, so this is just a community affair, excluding the media. It's up to the communities how they want to set this up. Okay, and what's nice about this community media councils is that they can serve as some kind of an arbitration or mediation alternative to litigation. In the barangay setup, we're familiar with the lupong tagapamayapa. No? So before anybody goes to court, you have to go through this lupon. Okay, and the media councils can position themselves so that rather than go to court, complainants can be persuaded to just go through the community media councils. No? Now, this can be legislated at the national level as a Republic Act. This could be a Supreme Court memorandum, or this could be a local agreement, okay, with the local courts. I'm not a lawyer, but I think in the Department of Justice, there is this particular office that is concerned with arbitration and mediation as an alternative to lawsuits. Okay. Now, I also happen to be involved with a group. We call ourselves it's a training program, and one of the things we're working on is a template for guidelines that local media councils can adopt. Okay, and maybe we can share that with you. We're still very rough at this stage now, but I think we can share some of the broad ideas with you. Okay, later. All right. The thing here is that I believe my personal belief is that good begets good. Okay, so instead of going to court, we have a group of editors who will embrace a voluntary right of reply and make good on the promise to print replies when necessary and if necessary. In the old days of print, we were stuck with the limited space, but nowadays we are also online, so we don't have to worry about space anymore. We can publish replies when necessary, either as separate pieces or as letters to the editor. Okay. I believe that embracing this voluntary right of reply can result in fewer libel suits. Okay, and in the future, even support the move to decriminalize libel and cyber libel. Okay, and this can be used as a safeguard against a legislated form of the right of reply. Okay, because we are already doing it. On the other hand, okay, the voluntary right of reply can also generate greater trust in media. This trust has been mentioned earlier. I think you've heard of this topic before. And greater trust in media can lead to increased news consumption. Okay, increased consumption of news from the legitimate sources. Nowadays, we know how people, especially young people, are consuming news. They're getting it from strange places, no? And there's a good part of that. If they increase their news consumption, it can also translate to more revenues for publications. And it can also further solidify our idea of media independence. Okay, so I think I will end here. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gary. Madami pong na-discuss kanina, no? Iba't ibang topics, pero ang dulo po nun is how important press councils are, how they can help us also in our efforts to decriminalize libel, at yung pushback natin dun sa legislated right of reply. Natawa lang ako, Prof, nung di-discuss mo yung government media councils that were formed during martial law. Tapos naalala ko yung discussions namin sa JORN 100 before, sa history of JORN, na sa ibang countries, hindi ito common lang sa atin. This also happened in other countries in this region, in this part of the world. And in fact, medyo mas malalaya tayo sa kanila because in Myanmar, every newspaper will have to go through the media council that is government run. At pag may hindi gusto, literal na binabaklas from the plate yung storya. So lalabas yung dyaryo na may mga white spaces the next day kasi hindi pumasa dun sa media council ng gobyerno. So ayun po, meron tayong response from our two community journalists and in their areas naman ay meron na silang effort or actually nag-establish na sila ng kani-kanilang Citizen Press Council or Media Citizen Council. So we will have Ms. Cherry Ann Lim to discuss the Cebu experience ng Cebu Citizens Press Council, to be followed by Ms. Jane Cadalig for the Cordillera experience on the Cordillera Media Citizen Council. Hi, Cherry.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I will...
Good afternoon.
Screen. Wala. Oh, wala. Maliit yung screen ko.
Parang nakashare ka ng buong mother. Ng buong screen. Yan, dyan lang.
Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll start now. This is the name of our council. It's the Cebu Citizens Press Council. And we have, if you can see my cursor, I'm going through the tagline, which is being accountable comes with being free. So we always remind ourselves that the press freedom we are given comes with accountability. So we have to be very mindful and responsible for every word that we publish or broadcast. So Cebu Citizens Press Council was activated in 2005. So what do we do? So we go to what's the purpose of the CCPC? There are four, but one of them is, as Mr. Gary Mariano mentioned earlier, it's a platform for airing grievance because there are some news sources who are not going to like everything that we write or broadcast. So inevitably, they will have some sort of grievance. And sometimes they will resort either to filing a libel case against you or worse, resorting to violence. And this is what we wish to avoid. So the council is an added forum for providing a grievance mechanism. So we accept complaints regarding accuracy, to correct an inaccuracy, and for those also who were not given the right of reply. So just two, because we don't want to handle too many things. So the council is also a forum for media issues. So we discuss all those subjects which are of interest to the media and the industry. And the point of this is so that we can have a unified voice that we can put out there to help shape public opinion and policy on those issues. Because we don't want to just let those issues pass without us giving our say, because it might result in something detrimental to the industry. Of course, we're an advocate of press freedom. So to help preserve press freedom, we watch out for what happens. Like Mr. Mariano was saying earlier, there are bills in Congress that might affect media negatively. So we also try to check on what's going on and if it will sort of restrict our media freedom, then we give our position. So we have, in fact, in the past sent resolutions to certain congressmen if there were any bills that were related to media. And we are also a catalyst for journalists' welfare. So we have initiated and supported plans and programs that benefit journalists. So anything that would help in their economic welfare, advancement in their craft, and most importantly, enhancement of their sense of professionalism and accountability. So we always remember that on the part of the journalists, it really starts with us. We have to be professional and accountable. This is the membership structure. So we have 15 members. And if you will see here on the left side, these are the media members. So of the 15, 7 are members of the media. So we have each newspaper represented, and then you have representatives also from the KBP. So kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas, that is for radio and TV. Here on the extreme right side, we have public members, meaning they're ordinary citizens with practically no relation to media. And then here in the middle is some kind of hybrid, which we call semi-media. So these are actually members of the academy. So they are either the coordinators or heads of journalism programs in the schools here. So here in the public members, just to give you an idea, all our officers are actually members of the public. They're ordinary citizens. So our president is a psychiatrist. Our vice president is a business leader. Our secretary is the dean of a law school. And our treasurer is a priest. And the other 2 public members are civic NGO linked personalities. So just to give you an idea, this used to be 5 daily newspapers, but now the daily news is purely online. So it's now 4 daily newspapers. And then you have the radio stations and the TV represented in the council. Now, usually the problem we hear is that when you have a group, the problem is a forum. So if there's no forum, you cannot decide on anything during that meeting, or the meeting will not push through. So to solve that problem, in the beginning, at the outset, we already had a system of alternates, substitutes. So in other words, let's say you're a member of media, and then for that particular meeting, you're not available, just send someone else from your news outfit. It's as simple as that. So let's say you're a member of the public, you're a business leader, you can't go, you send another business leader to go, or someone from the business sector. So that way there's always a forum and the meeting always pushes through. This is a photo of our Marcelo B. Fernandez Cebu Press Center, where we hold our meetings. So if you are selected to be a member of the council, what is expected of you? You are expected to attend the quarterly unbanked meetings. So this will tell you that we meet only 4 times a year, so only once every quarter, because we don't want to burden people because everyone's very busy. So we only meet once every quarter. So it's a lunch meeting and you have to eat, right? So it wouldn't really take up so much of your time because you have to eat and then there's a meeting and it's all part of that one thing. Then you may also be invited to attend a small group or preparatory meeting ahead of that unbanked meeting. Because normally in the unbanked meeting, we already submit to the whole body what we would like them to approve. So before that, you have to prepare. You have to draft, let's say, a resolution or whatever it is that you want the body to discuss. So small meetings, not very often also. And you will be serving the council for free. So there is no salary. So all the members and staff are volunteers. This is the complaints route which our executive director, Attorney Pachico Ciares, devised. Anyway, so there is that building I was showing you earlier, the Marcelo B. Fernandez Press Center, that is also our secretariat. So if there are any complaints regarding right of reply or accuracy, they are sent to that center. Then the center will forward it to the executive director. And if it's a complaint against broadcast, he'll just send it directly to the KBP Standards Authority. Otherwise, if it's print, then he sends it to a screening panel, meaning he'll just pick 2 or 3 people from the council to look at it, see if it meets the requirements. At the later, there are some requirements. And then if it's like, okay, this is something for us to discuss, and then there will be another board formed of 3 to 5 people who are not the same as the people here in the screening panel, and they will decide on what action to take. Then they will present that during the unbanked meeting. But honestly, we have never activated this because there's always mediation. Normally, when we receive a complaint, it's resolved right away. So we have not really activated this. What are the requirements for making a complaint? If you are complaining, you will not given the right of reply. You have to give first your complaint to the offending news publication. Just like I think what they do in the EPC, also Philippine Press Council. You have to send it first to the offending outlet. And only if the offending outlet did not address your complaint, whether through clarification or correction or apology, that's the time you send it to the Cebu Citizens Press Council. But you give them a chance first. You give the offending outlet a chance first to address your complaint. Then, of course, you have to enclose the clipping of the published material, specification of your grievance. And there should be a waiver of the right to sue. Earlier, I was showing you that we had 4 purposes, and one of them was to be a media forum to discuss media issues. So here are some resolutions that we passed since 2005. There were some bills or some developments that we opposed, and there were also some that we supported. So just to give you an idea of those we opposed, there was an ordinance a few years ago banning tabloids. So, of course, we said that we are opposed to it because I think the one who was suggesting it was not aware that the tabloid is referring more to the size of the newspaper, which is the small size. You know, the broadsheet is the big one, the Philippine Daily Inquirer and all. So the banning tabloids would be to sort of ban the community papers, because I think most of the papers outside of Metro Manila are tabloid in size. And then we also oppose the move by local legislatures to summon journalists to explain what they wrote or broadcast. We said that it is a form of harassment. Why do we need to show up there in your council to explain why we wrote that? What we wrote there is enough already. So there's no need for us to be asked to explain why we wrote that or how we came to write that. We also oppose the legislative right of reply for the reasons also mentioned by Mr. Gary Mariano. We thought that it was too draconian to impose, let's say, fines. At this time, there was even the threat of closure of the media outlet. which is like too much just for, not giving the right of reply. So just so you don't get confused, because the Civil Citizen Press Council accepts complaints if the news source was not given the right of reply. So you might say, why did you oppose the legislative right of reply? We are opposing the legislation of the right of reply because there are many impracticalities in the bills. But what we are, for example, the ones that we complained about, there were some specifications on when you should come out with the reply, where you should come out with it, how long it should be. So it was very impractical when we talk about editorial prerogatives. And then also, of course, we oppose the penalties that they were suggesting. So what we are advocating is the voluntary right of reply, which we continue to advocate. And we also oppose the libel provisions of the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012 because, of course, it made the penalty higher if you will be, if they will sue you for that article that came out in the web. And then most newspapers already have web, we're already online. So aggrieved news sources can just choose to sue us through the online publication because the punishment there is higher. So, and there was also provision there on the Department of Justice being able to just close a website, which technically it would also close your paper if your media outlet, if that is the only outlet you have for your news. Bills we supported the passage of the Freedom of Information Act and the removal of the penalty of imprisonment as a penalty for libel. So we sent letters to the various congressmen. The other thing is, this is the inside of our media center, the one I was showing you earlier, the Marcelo B. Fernandez Press Center. And I said that we meet only 4 times a year. We have a quarterly luncheon. So the room is not that big. Maybe you can accommodate 40, 45 people. And that's where we eat. And after we eat, we move the plates away and then we have our meeting. So straight like that. And they're always multifunctional because the quarterly meetings are the occasions where we have consultations with various sectors. So, there are conflicts with various sectors. If you are covering this particular, let's say, day, there's a running story. Usually you have a conflict with that sector that you are covering. So what we do is to avoid escalating the conflict between us and our news sources, we invite those people with whom we are in conflict. We invite them to our quarterly meeting. So ahead of that, we would say, for example, we're inviting let's say it's the priests. Now we are covering them and they are angry with us because of our coverage. We will invite them and we will say, okay, please prepare a list of all your grievances against media, 1 to 20 or how many, and then you present them at the quarterly luncheon. But during that meeting, we in the media will also present a list of all our complaints against your sector. So we will just exchange gripes. So the whole idea is for us to be able to answer their questions, because sometimes the questions are very simple. They just don't know, they don't understand how the media work. And then we also get to explain to them what our concerns regarding them are. And usually it just has to do with the flow of information between the two sectors. So this is just to show you the various sectors that we have met in our quarterly luncheons, so depending on what is the issue for the day. So I recommend this, that you invite those people with whom you are in conflict, because it has always resolved the conflicts that we had with them. Then they understand, this is why the media has been doing this. So they see that we are not evil and doing it just for no purpose except to say ill. We don't have any ill intentions, and they understand that when they get to see us and ask us the questions directly. We also give them tips on how they can pass on information to us. Something as simple as please designate an information officer. There are some government officers who don't know that. That's all. And because they don't like it that we call all the departments in their office, and we say it's because you keep passing us on to someone else. So we just designate someone, and we say, oh, okay, it didn't occur to them. So these are very helpful. I highly recommend. Just the other things that we've been doing, you don't have to do this. It's beyond already, Every year we had this magazine which we would come out with in September. And this is called the Cebu Journalism and Journalists Magazine. It's just to document the workings of the Cebu press. So you have there the Cebu media personalities. We write about their achievements, if they were awarded. We write about their challenges and the threats that they encounter, the problems of the Cebu press, and all those. This was once a year in September with a physical magazine. But when the pandemic came, everybody ran indoors. So the print edition stopped and it went online. So here is the website below, cebujournalism.org. So you will see the articles up there. There are still new articles there. But the print publication has not resumed. We also were able to make some documentaries, but not every year because it's kind of time consuming, depending on what was the topic of that certain year. So this one had a conflict with priests, so we had a documentary on that. Killing journalists, corruption of media, access denied. We had a difficulty accessing some lawyers, prosecutors. There's a reason for that. And then we had one on the police. Because I think it was the time of the hostage taking, and they were wanting to impose on us how we would cover such events. Then we thought one day in 2010, why document the work in the Cebu press only in a magazine? We do brick and mortar. So in 2010, here we leveled up and we now have a room in the museum. So we have a gallery there. We also put journalism and journalists. So CJJ, same as the magazine. CJJ Gallery. We came to an agreement with the Cebu provincial government, which owns the Museo Cebu. That is the Cebu Provincial Museum, where we will be able to spend 25 years there in one room free of charge. And we can fill it with materials on Cebu media. So this was opened in 2010, and at that time it was the only community media museum gallery in the country. So you have here the history of the Cebu press, old printing equipment, and then you have the new. So old to new printing technology. You have here photos of the pre-World War II Cebu journalists, and also the post-World War II Cebu journalists. And on another wall, you have the contemporary journalists. So I don't know if this is the only museum where you can see people who are alive featured there, who are still alive featured there. So there's also a wall board here on the contemporary media and the contemporary media groups. This one here, this big one here, is the photo of someone who was killed for his work. So he was killed by his news source in the Cebu City Hall because he was writing about corruption in the Cebu City Treasurer's office. And the treasurer and the gunman were really convicted and imprisoned. So there's a wall board here also for the other incidents of harassment and threats against media. So if you get the chance, maybe you can visit the museum. Cebu is just one small room there. Okay, other things we've done, you don't have to do all these. We have inside our Cebu Citizens Press Council website a little button there called Cebu Journey Law. It just contains some laws affecting media. It's helpful also for media practitioners who don't know what are the media laws, and also for students who might be interested. And there's also a list there of the incidents of violence and harassment against the media. So there are some about just injuries, and the others are verbal threats, and the others they were really killed. And then we have an update there if ever there's an update. Then we also have conversation. It's just a We don't do this so often, but we have an interaction with the academe. It's just to bridge the gap between the current journalists and the future journalists, which are the people in the schools. So we have a coordination with the Cebu Association of Communication Educators. It's just a group of mass comm and journalism teachers in the various universities here. So every now and then they invite us to go to they just pick a school. They say this school, we sit in the classroom and they invite a few journalists, and they pick a topic. We want to talk about this topic, okay? And then the students can ask us questions about that topic. Okay, we also initiate organizations related to media, such as the Media Legal Aid. Earlier, I was saying that we draft resolutions, a position on certain bills, and we have a group that helps us to. Actually, they are supposed to draft it, but they have not been drafting it. It is Attorney Pachico Ciares, our executive director, who has been drafting it, and they review it for any corrections or changes they might want made. So this is the Cebu Media Legal Aid. It's a group of volunteer lawyers. They're not paid also. So they are media savvy because many of them are also columnists in different newspapers. So they understand the work of media. So we also invite them every quarterly lunch. And we support also the activities of the Cebu Press. If these activities I'm mentioning here were not made by CCPC, but we just support them. So there are organizations here like a news cooperative, which CCPC supports. Activities related to media, like the Cebu Media Medical Aid Fund. So there was a time Attorney Ciares just went up to 2 Cebu congressmen and asked for money for medical aid for the Cebu Trimedia. So this was for hospitalization, maintenance medicine, but everything ended with the end of the pork barrel because they had no more money to give. And then there's Cebu Press Freedom Week, which we have every September. Cebu Press Freedom Week is 7 days of activities. Actually, it's 8 days because it's Saturday to Saturday. And all the Trimedia are the organizers. So we already have a system going wherein, let's say, this one you are looking at here is the opening parade on Sunday. But before that, on Saturday night, there is a beauty contest, Miss and Mr. Press Freedom. And then the whole week, Monday to Friday, we have forums. So there's already a system where, let's say, newspaper number 1 will do the Monday forum, newspaper number 2 will do the Tuesday forum, KBP will do Wednesday, and all that. And the Cebu Citizens Press Council, I said we meet every quarter. We insert our quarterly lunch there within that week. So it is part of the Press Week activities. Our third quarter lunch is part of the Cebu Press Week activities. Here, it so happened for this particular year, we had a photo exhibit. So it's different for every year. And we also use that as an occasion to, the forums that we have are an occasion for us to invite members of the public as well as students. So they get to interact with us also. And we have also used that week to have markers for dead journalists placed in certain areas, and we've also had some streets renamed after certain journalists. So Press Freedom Week is always held on the week in September where martial law was declared by the dictator Ferdinand Marcos, which is September 21. So whenever that week falls in that year, that is the week of the Cebu Press Freedom Week, which is to remind people how important press freedom is, because that was taken away when Marcos declared martial law and closed the outlets that were not broadcasting or publishing favorable things about his regime. So we came up with this brochure some time back about the history, purposes, membership, the things that I discussed with you, but there's an easier way. You just look at our website. Everything is there. Cebu Citizens presscouncil.org. So the ones I mentioned to you earlier, like the conversations, Cebu Journal, those other things here are the buttons here on the right side. You just click on them. And if you want to know more about the complaints process, you just go here on the left, here below, rules, or see here. it's there. So everything is there. When you have the time, if you have questions, you just go to our website. There. That is our logo, 2 logos, and a very important tagline which we always keep reminding everyone: being accountable comes with being free. So always be responsible as journalists. That's all.
Thank you, Cherry. I think we provided our audience with a very holistic point of view or look at how the Cebu Citizen Press Council operates and the things that you conduct yearly, the quarterly meetings, the discussions with various stakeholders. Kasi functioning na talaga yung press council sa Cebu eh. Kaya it's really one of the examples of how a press council can really serve as a bridge between the media and various stakeholders. Kasama na po din yung mga gustong magkaso sa atin. And now we move to Cordillera. By the way, for those of you who have questions for our speakers, please drop them in our chat box or raise your hand and we'll call you later during our Q&A. For now, we will move to our second example of a functioning press council. We call on Ms. Jane Cadalig for the Cordillera experience. Hi, Jane. Good afternoon. I know Jane is here. Baka naglolo ko ba ang
baka nag-internet niya.
Or baka nakamute pa.
Hello, Jane. Yeah, baka she's fixing pa something.
Oo nga.
Pero I think, Joyce, you can, okay, and dyan lang naman si Jane in Baguio, but okay, let's call siguro yung the next speaker natin muna.
Yeah, we will move na lang muna to. I know in some parts of our country, medyo difficult ang connection because of Agaton. But I see Jane. I see her profile
si Jane.
photo now.
Okay, andyan na.
Good afternoon. It's your turn now.
Hello. Hi,
Yes.
Good afternoon. Naririnig ba ako?
Oo.
Claro.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hindi ko marinig eh.
Ay, hindi mo marinig?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Oo.
Sorry, nakalimutan ko. Kasama pala ako ngayon.
Oo, kasama kayo sa lahat ng legs.
Yes.
Oo. Legs
Anyway,
and
good
arms
afternoon
and
everybody. Apologies for hindi ko talaga marinig. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Anyway, I'll just share very brief background on how the Cordillera Media Citizen Council was organized. Sometime in September or no, I think sometime in September last year, the PECO John Peace Conflict Journalism Network contacted me. Because they were doing a scoping study on possible areas where they can set up media citizen engagement or media citizen engagement mechanism. And Baguio City is one of the areas they wanted to set up. An MCE Media Citizen Engagement yung tawag nila eh. The project is is implemented by the Internews Philippines. It's funded by the USAID under the Initiative for Media Freedom. Luckily, Baguio City passed the criteria set by the PECO John and Internews, So they helped us establish our Media Citizen Engagement Council. And during the formation series, we had top CSOs ang mga partners namin because we thought that nowadays we need them for they are the ones working on the grounds. We need nowadays kasi the Media Citizen Cordillera Citizen Council was established under the backdrop of an information, the misinformation, misinformation and disinformation age. That's why when we decided to set up the mechanism, we agreed or we decided to involve the CSOs. Kasi ang main na gusto naming mangyari is to combat disinformation and misinformation, because gone are the days kasi when media, yes, we understand the role of press council, no, but nowadays kasi if they have complaints against the media, they can just post that on Facebook. So parang andun pa din naman yung function mo to be the venue, no, where you can discuss media issues and if there are complaints against the media or media practitioners. But side by side with that, we want to partner with the CSOs, and we want the CSOs to let us also know what's happening on the ground. Aside from them being our partners in educating the communities on how the media works. So we call it Cordillera Media Citizen Engagement. Cordillera Media Citizen Council, because we want to be as inclusive. While it's true that we are based in Baguio City mainly, the papers, the publications, and the stations are mainly based in Baguio City, no, we acknowledge the fact that we have publications outside of Baguio Benguet, in the other provinces. So we want them to be included, because sabi ko nga, we want to be as inclusive as possible. So anyway, as I mentioned, one of the main things that we want to do is to work together to basically media literacy, to help combat misinformation and disinformation. So we want to be the bridge, no? We want to work as the bridge. The council wants to, aside from resolving conflicts or media issues or media and community issues, we want to be the bridge, we want to serve as the bridge between the communities and the decision makers, kung ano man yung malaman ng kung ano man yung mga concerns that our partner CSOs would gather from the community. We will tackle it dito sa council and somehow make those concerns or bring those concerns to decision makers, not necessarily the government, but kung anumang institution or organization that's responsible or that is connected or that can do something about the concerns of the community. So we are a very young organization, and I'm embarrassed to say, no, that until now kasi hanggang sa launching pa lang kami. We launched the council in December. We intended to have our first event, to have our first activity. However, because of the threat of the Omicron, no? Nagkaroon kasi tayo ng Omicron noon. So, and then we were placed under level 3 hanggang naging level 2. And then, so we intended to have the media CSO dialogue in February. But that was the time that Baguio City and the rest of the region were under level 3. So we postponed that. Hopefully, it was postponed. It was not cancelled, no? Ano ba yung intention nung activity na yon? It's basically to introduce how the media works. and then to also for the CSOs to better appreciate, no, and where for us to learn where we can partner together or where we can collaborate. So it was postponed. Hopefully we can have it after elections na lang para because we also want to we also want to let the other the government agencies and other private institutions know about the Cordillera Media Citizen Council, what we do, what we intend to achieve, and we want to let them know or to gain their support para we can work together. Basically, to educate. It's very unfortunate that until now, no, we still have to educate our the public on what really the media does. Kasi nga, especially nowadays na mas nangingibabaw kasi ang SOCMED, and where we all are aware of how dangerous social media nowadays is because it has been used as a vehicle for misinformation. It has been used to discredit our practice. It has been used to harass legitimate media practitioners and legitimate journalism. So, yon. That's yun muna ang maishishare ko. I'm sorry, I really cannot hear. I really cannot hear the audio. No, I don't know what's the problem with my
Jane, no worries. We could hear you really well. I hope the sign language is working at this point. But I will message you also to please log out and then log in. Because later during the Q&A, balik po kayo, Jane, para makasagot kung may mga questions for you. Thank you so much. And that was and wag nating maliitin kung ano man yung nagawa na dun sa Cordillera, because Jane was very modest about it. Nakaka-start pa lang nila. It's always the difficult part to do is to start it eh. Pag nasimulan na, tuloy-tuloy na. Di ba, Ariel? Okay, at this point, I'd like to call Professor Luz Rimban from the Ateneo de Manila University. She will be discussing how to sustain local press councils and other mechanisms to expand its mandate. Happy birthday to you. Kumanta!
Fake news yun. Fake news yun.
Nag-greet din ako doon pero merong laugh emoji.
Ito ay kababagsak ng press council yung mga kumakanta ng nasa webinar. Hi ma'am, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Hi everyone, thank you for inviting me. So the Asian Center for Journalism at the Ateneo, I don't have a slide presentation.
Okay. Yeah,
ACFJ, Asian Center for Journalism, has been implementing a project called Ads for News, which in a nutshell is designed to support journalism by asking advertisers to channel their digital advertising spending to online news websites. ACFJ is doing this in partnership with Internews, the same entity behind the Cordillera Media Citizens Council. So our project, Ads for News, is being piloted here in the Philippines. So why digital ad spend? Because that is on the rise. As of December 2021, it is estimated that digital ad spending will constitute something like 60% of global advertising expense. And this will increase further in the years to come. It is estimated that global digital ad spend will be something like $77 billion this year. So more advertisers are placing their ads on online content creators, and the ubiquity of mobile phones is forcing prompting brands and advertisers especially to go there. They want their ads seen on mobile devices. But why focus on online news sites? Because advertisers are preferring to put their ads online where they can track who sees them. Given the technology these days, they can even determine whether that visual ad that you've seen is converted into an actual purchase, to the point that they can tell whether viewers will click add to cart. There's technology these days going in that direction. So placing advertising online is one of the most efficient ways advertisers make use of their money and getting their return on investments. So what does ACFJ's project want to do? We want to try to ask advertisers to put their money into the small, medium-scale news websites. These are usually the online versions of existing community newspapers, including members of the PPI. Some are digital-only websites. So we've set up a vetting system and are creating an index of news websites, examining them and telling advertisers, hey, look, put your money into these websites because these are the sites that need your money most. And these are the traditional news media that follow the standards of good journalism. We did not inform the websites that such a study was being undertaken. We based our evaluation merely on what could be seen on the websites. What were we looking for? Simple. We wanted to check if there was a commitment to a code of ethics, if the website stated who the owners are in clear terms. We checked bylines to see if real reporters were writing the story. We checked on the originality of stories. We made sure the websites don't publish fake news. So things like that. We at ACFJ are happy that we're undertaking such a project, but also concerned. You know, we Filipino journalists haven't had a tool such as this ever, as far as I know, that holds whole newsrooms to account. It's always been that when we talk of a code of ethics, we talk of acts that we want individual journalists to commit themselves to. The burden is always on the individual to be ethical. Here with our project is a mechanism where we also try holding the whole newsroom to account. Media owners, publishers, and editors should be held accountable. I'm just reminded of this incident a few days ago of the headline in 2 newspapers erasing the tax liability of one presidential candidate. It's been considered misleading by fact checkers. So it has gone through the fact checkers. And it's branded tantamount to misinformation, to say the least. Do we hold them accountable? If so, how? Anyway, ACFJ is still in the middle of the study, and I am not at liberty to talk at length about it. I'm only talking about it here because Ariel, Prof. Gary, Ami Kabusa of Mindanao Times, and the newly appointed Dean of Cebu Normal University, Joseph Tubilan, and I are part of a group that's discussing media self-regulation. And I happen to share with them ACFJ's project, which fits right into the topic of self-regulation. The project does not pretend to be the be-all and end-all, but we hope it is a start. So what do you think of the project? What do you think if we tell advertisers, hey, stay away from these newspapers. Don't publish your ads in them. They are peddlers of fake news. They mislead. In other words, the sanctions would be financial and economic. This is something that we can ponder, right? It might help keep news organizations accountable. At any rate, at the moment, advertisers don't seem to be inclined to publish in the small or medium news websites. Over the past 6 weeks, I have taken part in talks with brands, especially their marketing people. And one of the questions is, do these news websites have the metrics that we need? How big is their audience? Advertisers are now asking for that. And frankly, if you ask that of the small news websites, they don't. They don't have the audience. Some are too small. The Inquirers, the Field Stars, and the Manila Bulletins of this world are another matter. They have readers in the millions online. They are on the radar of advertisers. The question for the rest is, how do you grow your audience? How do you make a mark? How do you make a dent so that you get noticed by advertisers or picked up by the advertising and marketing applications? It's sad that a lot of so-called content creators, including those that peddle fake news, are the ones that are capturing digital advertising money and easing the legitimate news websites out of the picture. So that's not the topic of this forum, but it's related. And hopefully in the future, we can have a discussion, more of a discussion on this and other related topics as a way of focusing on how to help journalism survive. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Professor Luz.
And speaking of Joyce, si Luz will also take part in the other legs as well as in our big event. Remember, the PCA is going to have its annual big event on April 25. The second part, the first part, more particularly about monetization. And as Luz said, yung paano ba pwedeng kumita in that sense ang ating mga matitinong community newspapers, di ba? Members natin.
Actually, if I may say, I disagree a bit sa sinabi ni Ma'am Luz na hindi gaanong related sa topic natin today yung diniscuss niya. Tingin ko related na related kasi you can only claim to be free and you can only exercise press freedom if you're also economically viable. Yeah. Kung hindi kumikita yung dyaryo mo, di walang dyaryo to speak about in the first place. So napaka-importante rin yun before we can make any pushback. Siguraduhin muna natin na nakaka-survive yung ating dyaryo. Tahi-tahi po na ano talaga yan, na topics po. Equally important yung diniscuss si Ma'am Luz. And kudos sa ACFJ. I'm a proud ACFJ graduate din po. Kaya maraming salamat at napag-isipan nila itong ginagawa nila with Internews. Ma'am Luz, kung makapag-stay on kayo sana until the Q&A po. But otherwise, we really think.
My thesis defense eh.
Ay, maraming salamat po, Professor Luz Rimban. At this point, I'm gonna move to our session 5. Sabi ko sa inyo, hitik na hitik ang ating diskusyon. I'd like to call the PPI trustee for Visayas. The first one, Mr. Alex Pal, is with us. Hi, Sir Alex. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Sir, maulan po ba dyan where you are? Because I know Agaton is raining cats and dogs in parts of Visayas.
Agaton is in eastern Visayas. Nandito kami sa central Visayas.
Okay, buti naman, sir.
The other forecast is that it will rain this afternoon all the way towards tonight. Pero wala pa. Hinihintay ko ngayon. Yeah, so we've had wonderful discussions by our three speakers. And iniisip ko kasi, will press council work dito sa small city of Dumaguete? Alam mo, dito sa Dumaguete ngayon, 2 na lang kaming naiwan na dyaryo. So, kung mag-press council kami, parang magkape na lang kami at pwede na naming diskusyonan yung mga issue. But people here are not in the habit of complaining about what we print. Siguro, it's either one of two things. We are not holding our part. We are not living up to our part of making powerful people accountable. That's one. Or number 2, we are compliant with the requirements or the protocols of journalism where we have to give equal space to all parties in a story. I'd like to think that we are number 2, although some might say that's not true. So, dito sa Visayas, we have a very good working example, which is Cebu. There is another big city which has more than 2 newspapers, which is Tacloban. But I don't know if Director Masi is here with us because of Agaton. Maybe
wala siya ngayon, Trustee Pal. He's not
I have cousins also in Leyte and they are not online. So I think this storm is also affecting the internet there.
Yeah.
So another city I can think of na medyo maraming dyaryo, more than 2, is Iloilo. Yeah, who do we have somebody from Iloilo, Sir Ariel?
Yes, Francis here. You can actually call Francis. Yeah,
Francis Andipito, yes. Francis na binabaha ngayon.
Oo. Naku, challenge ang Iloilo. You're being challenged by our trustee for Visayas. Francis, what can you say?
Bayong hapon sa tanan, kahit mabagyo, pinabaha na po certain parts of the city and province ng Iloilo ngayon.
Ingat.
Yeah, we're still doing, we're coping. Actually, we have a press club, but parang 7107 din, minsan lubog, minsan lilitaw, to be honest about it. There are certain dynamics within the club. It's an all-exclusive organization for the practitioners. So the concept of press council has always been in my mind ever since I started with the media more than 2 decades ago. And I even try to invite myself to Cebu Press Freedom Week to observe the dynamics ng kanilang press council. Because I'm really attracted to the way how the community, not just the practitioners, interact with each other and in trying to solve, the concerns of the general community where they exist and operate to understand kung anong trabaho natin. At the same time, to cater kung ano ang mga misgivings or misunderstandings or concerns nila with journalists. So, I've studied the Cebu Press Council model. I have been talking to a lot of people, particularly sa private sector, the business sector, even the government sector, on a personal level, to, on how feasible would this be, because each area has a distinct culture when it comes to journalism, particularly community journalism. Interaction of each outlet is different from other areas. Maybe in other areas, it's more friendly. Maybe in other areas, it's more competitive. But pag may mga commonality din naman yan, you can start like magpalaro ng basketball, so okay yan, they gather together. In some other aspects, it might be, we need a little more work on that, particularly in addressing issues besetting our profession, particularly on the issue of ethics, ethical concerns namin. So, as to the challenge ni Trustee Alex and the rest of the PPI, and of course with the guidance and inspiration of our speakers, slowly, I think the community should really work on this first, not just one media organization or a group of media organization. The invitation should come from the community, of course. Invite all the outlets and all the other concerned entities, CSOs, even government instrumentalities, on how we could dialogue and form the straightforward group lang din, unti-unti. Again, as our resource speakers have suggested or indicated in their presentations, this will be a bridge between the community and journalists. Us, without giving up our independence as journalists, but at the same time, without being hindi tayo masyadong callous or insensitive naman sa community natin, because admittedly, we need the community as well, business-wise or in carrying out our work as journalists, because they are our news sources. So, ganun po. So, we will try very much with the private sector in planting the seeds of the community press council dito sa Philippine. Dahan-dahan. Cebu, walang problema. They were well-established. They are our model actually. Doon sa Cordillera, certain lessons that we have to learn na hindi ito madali. It's not an overnight thing. So dahan-dahan until such time na may cohesiveness yung council at it attains its purpose to serve the community, not as another exclusive club for the practitioners.
Yeah, I understand Francis' kind of hesitation in offering himself to start the press council kasi people will say, sino ka ba? Di ba? You're among a community of equals. Tapos, you want to head something that is revolutionary. So, I don't know, Ariel, maybe PPI can take the lead and siguro partner muna with Academe so that the Academe there could call people to meeting and then saka na papasok yung press council.
True. It may seem difficult to start establishing a press council, pero sabi nga natin sa PPI, let's make it work this time. And I think it's imperative that the leadership will be on the regional trustees. Of course, kami, nila Joyce as secretary, nandun pa rin. Remember, Joyce, when we met in the office, sabi namin, in fact talaga, ang una namin naisip was go to Iloilo. To meet the publisher as well for two things, not just about the press council, but for our other project, which is the monetization, the incentivizing the press, the PPA News Commons, among other things. Kasi tay-tay po yan yung ginagawa namin sa PPI. So we like to have an audience with the publishers and owners of the community media outlets, as well as with the trustees, who will be more particular this time in Visayas, with the regional trustees in Visayas, who will be at the helm of the press council, with, of course, kami pa rin. So it's probably like less work. We don't want you to, burden you with a lot of things, because I know you're very busy with newspaper work. But we're just here to let you know that we'll be backing you up if you say yes. And it's challenge accepted, I think, Joyce, from on the part of Iloilo. But don't worry, Francis and Trustee Pal and Trustee Graphil, the PPA team will be there for you to help you establish, for as long as tulungan din kami para i-identify kung sino pwedeng invite namin as prospective council members na magkakaroon tayo ng face-to-face with them after the elections. Ayun. So, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe Francis can take off a few names which who he feels will be ideal members of this council. Yeah. And these are the people whom we can call, we can meet with. We can schedule a trip to Iloilo, meet there.
Absolutely.
I actually have several names in mind, particularly one from the academe, then the business sector, then the civil society organizations. Okay na kami sa media because once kami naman, madali naman si kausapin yung mga management. Or maybe siguro just to, the nitty-gritty. As always, the devil is in the details.
Yeah. Only this time it has to be inclusive. Unlike the Philippine Press Council under the press is limited to print. That's why we want to create local media council outside of the NCR to include or engage other non-print. Diba? Yung nasa broadcast, nasa online. Pero kayo pa rin, diba Joyce, sila pa rin ang mag-iisip kung ano ba yung, wala naman pwedeng paggayahan Pero meron paggayahan, pero sa inyo pa rin yung pag-iisip kung ano yung ideal na media council para sa inyong lugar. Ayun. Of course, with the help of...
Depende on their local context, realities on the ground. Pero as always, gusto ko yung binanggit ni Sir Alex and ni Francis, na yung academe talaga, low-lying fruit pagdating dito sa effort na to. Natural allies natin ng academe.
Correct.
Na pwede talagang sumama kaagad at siguro naman sa dami ng scholastics natin across the country, ang dami nating pwedeng maging partners din kaagad dito sa effort natin.
Yes.
So, ayun. Sir Alex, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, now, where is the ball?
I think at this point, I'm not sure if Ami was able to connect because baka ang kanyang connection din ay nahihirapan. But we will now take questions for our resource speakers. If you have questions, please drop them sa ating chat box. Actually, ako may gusto po akong itanong kay Miss Cherry Ann. I think last time I also asked a bit about this, pero for the benefit of our audience now, Miss Cherry, gaano yung commitment naman ng mga government agencies or stakeholders in Cebu in avoiding the filing of a libel case once they resort to the Citizen Press Council? Nasusunod po ba yun? Do you make them sign a waiver na parang if they participate here, then they will no longer pursue the libel case? Ganun po ba yun?
Actually, we received very few complaints. And then, na-receive namin, I think, less than 20. All the years, yung iba were also not related to accuracy or right of reply. So, if you remove those, talagang very few. And then, like I mentioned earlier, that although we have a complaints mechanism, we were never able to activate it. Because once the Secretariat receives the reply, receives a complaint and sends it to the Executive Director now is Pachico Ciares, so it's a Sunstar.
Mga minamahal kong kawani ng kagawaran ng katarungan. Lugod ko pa yung...
May sumingit lang po na sana mag-mute.
Once the complaint is sent, let's say, to us, we forward it to the publication concerned. And then normally the publication will reply right away. Like, let's say what the complainant was complaining about not being given the right of reply, we give it to the offending outlet. And then in a few days, we already see that there is already published the right of his reply. So it's immediately addressed. So we have never gone beyond that because it's immediately addressed by the publication.
Miss Cherry, tingin niyo ba by the very creation of the Citizen Press Council, parang naging, how do you call this? On your own, yung mga members ninyo, parang parang nag-level up din in terms of upholding ethics, in terms of being responsible. Ganun po ba yun?
Para sa akin, it really helps. Because there's this psychological or moral suasion that we are advocating giving the right of reply, being accurate. So we should really follow because we are the ones advocating it. So I think it really helps. Plus the one I mentioned earlier in the Luzon leg is that the secretariat now, let's say it happens to be Sunstar, all the complaints of the various media outlets will go through us. So we will be able to see the complaints of the news sources against our rivals. So that's also one thing, I guess, that would be a deterrent. Aside from the fact that we are always hammering every quarter that we are advocating with giving the right of reply and accuracy. I think, I definitely think there's been an effect.
Parang the mere fact that you can be named and shamed, malalaman ng mga kabaro ninyo, no? If you do something that violates the ethical standards of our profession, parang that's enough to convince you to do better. Kahit wala pang nagkakaso.
But also more of that, yung reminder lang, it's always being shout up na yung logo natin, being accountable comes with being free. Tapos they're part of the conversations, when we have resolutions, they're part of the drafting of all these. So we are asking for certain things. If we are asking that our freedom will be maintained, you have to be responsible for this freedom given to you. So parang subliminal na yun, subliminal.
Yeah. Sir Gary, curious lang ako, if because there's now this push to revive the local press councils, ano sa tingin niyo yung biggest hurdle or biggest challenge that has to be discussed by the people who are trying to revive the press councils? Is it cyber libel? Is it ano po ba yung parang pinaka pressing na issue na dapat tukuyin kaagad ng press councils?
Well, it's the commitment to be accountable. My point is always that most people are ethical and want to be ethical, but the temptation to be otherwise is greater when no one is watching. So when we have other people guiding us, calling our attention, there's a greater predisposition to stay ethical. But as far as the issues are concerned, I can't speak for each community. I think each neighborhood will have their own, each community will have unique needs.
Parang tama yun, sir. Yun ang pinakamahirap. To make a commitment to hold ourselves accountable. Yun yung first step talaga that we have to hurdle. Si Jane, curious lang kami, ano ang mga nasa pipeline for the Cordillera Media Citizen Council? Kasi you said, di ba, parang because of the pandemic, hindi ka agad na roll out yung mga plano. I'm sure Jane can hear us. Sabi niya kanina, naririnig na niya tayo.
Hindi pa rin siguro, Joyce.
Okay na?
Ito na, ayan.
Okay na.
Go, Jane.
Hello. Ayun, kayo naman ang hindi ko marinig. Anyway, after we shall have done with the CSO Media Dialogue, one of the events that we have scheduled is for basically media literacy. Media literacy kasi admittedly, especially in the communities, there are still those who do not understand how the media works. Even nga those who are in the urban areas, no, if they see, sabi ko nga, the social media has really made the landscape a battleground, parang ano. They had found an ally in SOCMED, no, to discredit the work of the legitimate media. We understand that yes, there are shortcomings. Some may have shortcomings, pero hindi kasi lahat. So anyway, one of the activities, the events that we have planned, no, by the second semester is to hold a media literacy. And then mayabang kami, ang dami naming plano, pero yun nga, mahirap talagang mag-take off. After the media literacy, sana makapag-train din kami ng community of fact checkers. Yun yung mga nauna muna namin in-identify para hindi kami masyadong ma-overwhelm. But those are as starters, no, those are the events or the activities that we have planned within the year. Parang yun muna, and then we will see how things will go from that.
Jane, I think you should work closely with us then talaga sa PPI, especially on the aspect of building a community of fact checkers, di ba, Ariel? Parang it was something that we discussed before na yung mga community journalists, we should gather them and do a team of fact checkers kasi ngayon medyo nakakoncentrate sa national media pa yung fact-checking efforts natin. But very, very good projects in the pipeline for Cordillera. Puntahan ko lang si Sir Alex. Sir Alex, perhaps you can give maybe a snapshot. Ano ba ang context natin sa Visayas? Ano ang mood? Ano ang pressing issues pagdating sa press freedom and media accountability in general?
Well, Cebu, for instance, are very, very jealous of press freedom. Then, pagdating sa other cities, I think Iloilo is very going to be a very possible, a good model, no? That can follow after Cebu's lead. After Francis said that he has been looking at the model of the Cebu Press Council, or the Cebu, how Cebu does the Press Freedom Week celebration. Sa kasi, like different regions, there are 3 regions in the Visayas. Iba-iba ang temperament. Like Dumaguete, it's known as what? The city of gentle people. So people here don't like to raise a storm, about public issues.
Madami po bang cases ng libel sa Visayas? Parang hindi pa natin napag-aralan yan na regional basis. Kumusta ang...
I've had 4 in this small city of ours. I'm sure libel is also happening. Libel cases are also being filed mostly in Cebu, I'm sure.
Oo. Parang isa yan sa dapat pala mag-libel audit tayo.
Libel audit.
Sa ating mga para makita natin kung ano ang situation on the ground, ano?
I think NUJP has been doing that.
Yes,
every now and then. Let's connect with an NUJP. Tapos Joyce, gusto ko lang, as I always say this, well, I said this in the first leg, the press council by itself or the media council by itself is not actually an organization. It is composed of stakeholders who are committed to make it work, but it is really a mechanism. Isa siyang initiative along the line of accountability, self-regulation, press freedom, and other scope. Binanggit na ni Luz kanina, it will evolve into something that's more probably relevant and more responsive to the times, as was mentioned a while ago, at other mechanisms that will make it more functioning at this point sa media landscape considering, yeah.
What we don't want it to be is another old boys club,
Yeah.
you know, na
Yes, of course. Oh, yeah.
the stereotypical press council. Yun po ang tunguhin natin. May questions pa po ba tayo? Baka may mga
Wala
gusto
na
magtanong,
actually.
sina Marshall.
Oo, sila Marshall, Bacolod, active din yan. Oo.
Oo.
Yeah, Bacolod is also active in the fight for press freedom. And I think I have some friends there who are also facing libel suits.
Marcel, if you're
Napaka-stressful
here,
ng libel.
true. Siyempre, Joyce, naranasan mo yan for 10 years, di ba?
10 years kung binuno ang aking libel case at napakagastos po. Every time na pupunta ako sa korte, kailangan bago manicure, bagong pedicure, bumili ng damit. Kasi stress na stress ka, katabi mo mga naka-letter P na t-shirt. Feeling mo, kriminal na kriminal.
Wala yata si Marshall. Pero yeah, we can connect with, the Bacolod as well. Oo, yun.
Sabi ni Francis, nakakaingit din daw ang Negros Press Club. Si Rides is listening from Legazpi.
By the way, just to answer to Francis' thought on the press club. Ang press club, Francis, tsaka ang press council magkaiba ha. While the press club, nandun yung press club, sobrang tagal na yan. It's really an organization. But as I said, ang press council, iba yung hubog niya, iba yung mold niya, at saka iba yung trabaho niya. In fact, naklaro namin to sa PPA tsaka sa board din na especially yung thoughts ni chairman na hindi siya mag-overlap dapat sa ginagawa ng PPA but i-reinforce niya yung ano man yung ang tawag nun? Na plant na or na itanim na ng PPI for so many years at huwag lang tigilan ito para tuloy-tuloy na rin. Ayun. At saka nagtitake na siya into ang tawag dito, Joyce, nag-iiba na yung niya, nag-iiba na yung mukha niya.
Yes.
Nag-evolve na talaga siya. Ayun, oo. Ayun.
Okay, kung wala nang mga tanong, I think we have a very productive discussion. Si Rides sa Legazpi.
Oo, nagra-write siya ng article. Next time, Rides, probably we can talk to you about this para you might want to consider. So let's have a forum also. Baka pwede pa natin ihabol another round for Luzon, etc. Yun. Any last words from our trustee Pal, before i-close ni Joyce?
Well, I do look forward that we will be able to form at least one press council from this gathering, and that is the Iloilo Press Council. Looking forward really to having that.
Let's do this. Kaya natin yan, Trustee Pal.
Yeah, and then because malapit na Bacolod from Iloilo, we might have two.
Yeah. Tsaka mag-face-to-face na tayo this year for that alone, meeting you, the publishers, owners, plus on another level, meeting the members of the prospective members of the council. Ayun, Joyce. Happy note after all.
Ayun, we end on a happy and positive note.
Yeah.
We really look forward to having the Iloilo Press Council. Kung hindi pa po sapat yung mga argumento na na-discuss today, paalalahanan ko lang po kayo na napakasarap ng RG's Butterscotch ng Iloilo. Kaya ituloy na po natin itong press council na ito. Yun pa lang sapat na dahilan na para pumunta tayo Iloilo at ayusin ang press council po dyan. No, but seriously speaking, the RG's is really good, but press freedom tastes even better. Always tastes even better. So let's work on this. This is a collective effort. Hindi lang natin, kundi pati ng iba pang stakeholders who hopefully in the process will also come to value our worth as an essential part of democracy, of a democratic nation like ours. So maraming salamat po sa lahat ng ating speakers, kay Professor Gary, kay Ma'am Luz, kay Sir Alex, kay Miss Cherry Ann, kay Jane, even yung mga hindi nakasama sa atin because of connection problems today. We look forward to having you kung sakaling ma-schedule natin yung Luzon leg pa, another one for this one. And as
But our Mindanao leg will be on, Kellen Joyce, April 27.
Yes, the Mindanao leg will be on April 27. And if we proceed with the face-to-face, it will be pabaliktad. It will be Mindanao to Visayas, then going to Luzon. Before I officially end this, I'd like to invite all of you to the remaining events of PPI for this month. We have our podcast on the 3rd week of April. And
that's April 21. Your RPD on April 20.
April 20, yes.
Our Scholastic for Nueva Ecija is on
22.
April 22. Our big event, Sir Gary, you'll be part of
25th.
that. That's April 25. And then a day after will be Press Council Mindanao. And then wala pang Batangas, wala yung 28. But UST NCR will be May. So unless merong mga isisingit na pressing activities. Pero
and uunahan ko na po sa May 2 on the eve of the World Press Freedom Day, we will also have another discussion on journalism under surveillance. And may pasabog kami ng konti doon eh. Fingers crossed kung matutuloy. You will be seeing a lot of people who might, mold our history for the next 6 years.
Yeah.
Kung sino-sino po sila. And after May 9, kung tayo ba'y mag-iinuman sa lungkot o mag-iinuman sa galak, malalaman po natin yan next month. And this is Joyce Panares, Seminar Director of the Philippine Press Institute. I turn you over to, napaka-formal ulit, Ariel Sobolino, our Executive Director.
Maraming salamat, PPA Seminar Director, for all our speakers and our wonderful and significant discussion on Media Accountability Press Council. Ito po ay mangyari ito lang ang pauna muna, Joyce, no? Pero madami pang diskusyon we are going to have for the rest of the year at kasama po hindi lang tayo as members of media committee pero yung publiko importante. Lagi namin sinasabi sa PPA, hindi kailangan limitahan ang diskusyon about anything under the sun sa aming mga nasa PPA o nasa industriya pero kasama po natin ang publiko sa anumang diskusyon ang pwede namin pag-isipan sa PPA. On that note, we're happy to say thank you again to Hans Seidel Foundation for giving us, room for creativity, Joyce, para makapag-isip ng madaming programa. Madaling gumawa ng Zoom, magaling gumawa ng online, pero actually mahirap po mag-isip ng mga programang na ayon sa ating panahon at para po sa ang tawag nito, para sa kamalayan ng ating publiko. On that note, thanks very much, Olive, for joining us today. And we hope you have a good day and we can now eat. And we'll see you, Mindanao, on April 27. All right. And please do visit the pages of PPI and Hans Seidel Foundation for more details on our events. And also you can visit our website, PPI News Commons, for reportage on the elections and the pandemic. Thanks, everyone.
The survey is as a chat room, please.
As a chat room, okay. Please do not forget to answer the survey so that we can do better and more under the auspices of Hans Seidel Foundation. All right. Salamat, Sir Gary, Jane, Alex.
Thank you,
Mike pala to. Hi, Mike.
I'm late.